Well, don't I feel like a pig in you-know-what at the moment? That's what happens when we hit mock draft day, and we bloody love mock draft day. Here at Daz Talks Footy, we have hit the end of June, therefore it is time to go through the entire first round of the AFL draft and make our selections accordingly with some beautifully said justifications, if you don't mind me saying so. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy my 2024 AFL mock draft for the month of June. Let's go. Still rocking with Josh Smiley to North Melbourne at pick 1. His size is a massive factor. His 2 games in the Carnival so far haven't been all that impressive, just the 17 disposals in his first game, but he did have 9 clearances in that second game to go along with 22 disposals. I'm just seeing a lot of Patrick Cripps with this guy. I know that's the easy comparison to make given they're both big-bodied midfielders, but both of them had some questions, especially halfway through their draft year, of their ability to hit the ball on the outside and get to the outside of the contest. But is anyone complaining about that with Cripper now? Not really. I don't think it's much to complain about with Josh either. And him, George Wardlaw, and the likes of Sheasel, McKercher, whether he actually goes into that centre bounce McKercher or he can play the ultimate outside role, we will wait and find out. But this North core is developing beautifully. It looks like they're keeping Luke Davies-Uniacke as well, which is a massive tick. And in all honesty, I've kind of flipped on the Cam Zurhaar situation. They need to keep him as well. They really do. Who would have thought that would have been my opinion in March? But here we are. Richmond take Jagger Smith with pick 2. It's just the logical choice. Has had a connection with the Tigers for a little bit now. In his 2 Carnival games, he's had 69 total disposals, but in his 37 disposal game, 23 of them were handballs, had just over 250 metres gained. Did have nearly 120 fantasy points, though, if you give a damn about that kind of metric. So that's always good. Now, look, he's not a, Mitchell, Matt Crouch, this type of player. He definitely is more damaging than that. Something to keep an eye out for. I'm pretty sure recruiters will want him kicking the footy more because he is a beautiful kick. Don't get me wrong in that regard. But what he would bring to Richmond as well is another dynamic with Tim Taranto. Whether Jacob Hopper is going to be fit enough, there are questions over Dion Prestia's health as well. Kane McAuliffe looks a player, a really good one at that. Loved him in his draft year last year, and Jagger would just bring another dimension here. And considering someone like Liam Baker could net them a first-round pick, and we will try to get into the trade space with future mock drafts. Richmond should have a really good hand here, but no matter what, I think they have to start with Jagger at the time of recording. Brisbane matched the bid for Levi Ashcroft here. He had 28 disposals in his previous Carnival game and tore it up. Will is going to be back over the weekend. It's going to be fun to see him play. He and Levi are going to be a dangerous combination. Levi's going to struggle to get into that Brisbane Lions midfield with the aforementioned Will. You've also got Neil, McCluggage, these guys that are around. Dunkley as well. I should not mention. Up to you to decide whether you want to go down that path or not. But he is going fantastically at the moment. Can hit the scoreboard. I can see him starting on a wing, maybe he and Jasper Fletcher in the future. Maybe he can go past a Jackson Pryor or someone like that who's fighting for one of those wing spots. But Levi lands in their lap, and a naturally gifted footballer is what they're getting as well. So a really good pickup here for the Lions, and they would sacrifice their first round pick they've already got under either the new rules, but of course the old ones as well. I'm still pretty high on West Coast taking Luke Traynor with their first pick. With such a midfield-heavy draft, they can pick up in the second round a quality mid still, and we'll talk about the players that are off the draft board at this point in time, or still left on the draft board, I should say. But Traynor, the intercepting king. Tom Barras is going to stay at West Coast. Jeremy McGovern is going through not quite career best form, but he has been incredible. Probably the best form we've seen for at least 4 years at this point in time. Rhett Bazzo is still on the list and hopefully developing, so he won't need to play kind of what James Sicily has had to be at the Hawks. He can actually be what James Sicily should be, that intercepting defender. 26 touches, over 700 metres gained, half a dozen marks. He is the intercept king, and I am sure that he is going to do very well. And I just feel like West Coast is not only an amazing fit, but also the best pick for them at this point, the way it's going. Yes, there are midfielders still here. I still reckon they can get a really good one later on in this draft. Gold Coast match a bid here for Leonardo Lombard, so they would give up pick 7 in this draft, and that would likely be the only pick they do with the 20% discount, although with the new rules that still haven't been announced yet, which is already pretty damn stupid, we'll just have to wait and see. We got to live with that. Only 178 centimeters tall, but he makes every one of them count. A very, very clever footballer. Had 32, kicked 2 and had 500 metres gained against WA. Had a reasonably quieter game earlier on in the Carnival. He's definitely a better midfielder than a forward for mine, but a bit like Jake Rogers, it's going to be such a difficult Gold Coast midfield to break into when he eventually gets there. So he is going to have to start, you'd probably say, on that half-forward flank. Another quality ball user, and like I said before, a really, really smart footballer who is going to improve Gold Coast's forward line. If someone had said to me in March Finn O'Sullivan was going at pick 6, I would have laughed at you. But the injury, the fact that he hasn't played yet, really want to see more of his 2024 form, means that he just can't move up for mine at this point in time. He has underrated wheels, he is a contested beast, and I have no doubt that in terms of power rankings and things like that, everyone is going to think this is way too low. And I completely understand why, but the hand injuries, the lack of exposed form in 2024, and also mock drafts, power rankings, very different things. But we just simply have not seen him enough this year to justify his form last year. We need to see it here, and we are going to. At the time of recording, he is due back any week now, and I can't wait for him to rocket up the board and create a big 3 in terms of exposed form with Jagger and with Josh Smiley. And he will do it very quickly, in my opinion. If Adelaide could get this kid, though, there would be party time at the Crows. My goodness me, this kid could be anything. A very special talent. The Saints at 7 take Sid Draper, the South Australian star. Could be a back-to-back state MVP, but has had a little bit of a quieter start. Had over 300 metres gained in a game where he had 7 kicks, which is extraordinary just by the by, but he is a natural-born leader and would add to a St Kilda midfield that has struggled with Jack Steele in there. Brad Crouch is not getting a game. When you think of guys like Darcy Wilson on the outside, Marcus Windhager on the inside, they need to inject some youth into a pretty piss-poor midfield, to be honest, and he could definitely be one of the catalysts for that and be that 4th or 5th midfielder that could maybe try to add some things around the ground. I haven't really seen anything outside of that natural midfielder position, which in the AFL can cause some trouble when you're young and coming through, but there is no doubt about this young man's ability to win the footy, find the footy, and get his team moving forward. All things St Kilda bloody need in spades right now. The Hawks at 8, I've got them taking Matt Whitlock. Now, I had Jack last month, and then a day or so later, they took Jasper Scaife, in the mid-season draft. So that kind of messed with that plan, but I still feel like key position depth here is going to be key for the Hawks. It looks like they're going after Bailey Smith with plenty of aplomb, and in my mind, I think the first-round pick they should trade is next year's and still take a key position player, and I think Matt or Harry O'Farrell is the call here. Yes, Jimmy Blank is there. Sam Frost has gone through a renaissance. Will McCabe, I still don't think is a key position defender. Ethan Phillips has been okay, but if you're bringing in Bailey Smith, you definitely don't need a midfielder. The Hawks have got plenty of small forwards, and if Mitch Lewis is fit, between him, Marbior Chol, Cole Shadir, and Jasper Scaife, there is plenty of depth there. And you also don't need a ruckman. Maybe unless Ned Reeves is on the move, which, fine. But Lloyd Meekie's there. Hawthorn love Max Ramsden. Clay Tucker was taken in the mid-season draft who, look, probably hasn't really come close to a debut. But are you really going to take a ruckman on that, with that depth, that trajectory in that first round? Not really. So I'm firmly in the key of either take the best midfielder available. But again, the Hawks are looking at Bailey Smith, so go get yourself some key position depth. And Matt Whitlock can do that in a big way. Has 2 bags of 5s in the under-18s, looks more natural defender, and that says a lot about his talent. So the Murray Bushrangers product heading to Dingley, Waverley, whatever you want to go with, depending on where the Hawks are at. I know they'll be at Waverley, that's okay. Is a really good pick for mine. Gold Coast go with Harry O'Farrell here, their second of their top 10 draft picks, not only in this draft, but overall. Back shoulder defender, they do not miss on a lot of things, the Gold Coast Suns, when it comes to list size. I still think small forward is an area they can go with. A Joe Berry at this spot would not be out of the question at all. If Ben Ainsworth is on the move, that could also be a position they could look at bolstering in the trade period. Or, of course, there are going to be some small forwards available in the mid sections of this draft. They could go after some other players in the trade period. Who knows? But at this point in time, yes, they've got Collins. Yes, they've got Ballard. Yes, they've got McAndrew. But I think the talent here is just too good to ignore with a 196 key position defender who is also a really good kick. May not be the best fit in terms of depth, but talent-wise and what he can bring to the table, I think this is a really, really good go here. Third tall in a row, Jack Whitlock goes to the D's. Yes, they've got Jacob Van Rooyen. Yes, they've got Matt Jefferson, who we haven't seen yet. Hope we can see him in the back end of the year. But Ben Brown's not really getting it done, as we know. Tom McDonald's playing down back and doing what he's doing. So to add in a guy who's 200 centimeters, really good below his knees, he's got an aerial presence that we love as well. He's still raw, would take a little bit of development as well, but considering how Melbourne have drafted the last couple of seasons, I still think they need more key position depth. I also think they need to get more first-round draft picks in this and next year's draft. Melbourne need to rebuild on the fly here. They absolutely do. Start with a tall, you're working out beautifully. So the second Whitlock to go in this draft, Jack goes probably higher than a lot of power rankings suggest, but in terms of fit, Melbourne need this bloke. The first of Freo's selections going to go with Joe Berry here, who's kicked 23 goals in his last 8 games, and he's going magnificently at the moment. An electric small forward, fits the need for the Dockers in a massive way, just knows where to find it, but also underrated in his ability to mark overhead. Now, when you hear that, you might think your automatic comparison is Toby Green. I definitely don't think that's the case, and that's not an insult to either of those players. I just think Berry on the ground brings an extra dynamic. I would definitely trust Toby more in a one-on-one situation. Of course, Toby's got that leadership, all of those good things, but just because you hear a small player has a good overhead mark, that player comparison may be a little bit unfair. Joe is Joe, and let him be Joe, and Joe is bloody good. If you do want to compare mock drafts with power rankings, you might see this as a reach, but you can't convince me that Geelong should not take Jonty Fall with their first pick, the Greater Western Victoria Rebel, who has come back with aplomb, kicking a couple of bags, well, 1.5 bags if you consider 5 in his first game back and 3 in his most recent outing. He's got really good hands, would join Jeremy Cameron and Shannon Neal and play as that third tall forward. I have mocked Job Shanahan to the Cats throughout the mock draft period. I think this is now the third one that I've done, and I've definitely done Job to the Cats on one occasion. But Jonty is your pure tall forward. Shannon Neal can play a little bit of ruck with Toby Conway as well. So you've got Jezza, you've got my man Fall here. You've got Shannon Neal, who can help as that 3-pronged tall forward, considering you've still got Ollie Henry. What's happening with Tyson Stengel, we'll find out at this point, but the Geelong forward line could kind of retool and restructure on the fly as they look to build their midfield from the inside out. I think I had this the same last month, but GWS take Christian Moraes here at this point. A bit of a slide, I know, but the questions about his inside game are starting to get a bit louder from those that I talk to in the draft space. But his outside work is so clean. His basketball background allows him to see the ground in a beautiful way, as we know with some other players that have had basketball backgrounds. That is always a cause of a meme, which is always fun. But considering the Giants have got Tom Green and Stephen Caniglio and these guys that can win the ball on the inside, that somewhat deficiency, if you want to go down that path, can be rectified reasonably quickly. So Christian to the Giants just makes a lot of sense. I think this is a guy that could go a lot higher than this, a lot lower than this, around this mark. So in terms of picking a draft range, I think his is wide open. He is definitely the kind of player that clubs would have higher than others. Absolutely. Carlton match a bid for Ben Camporeale here, and spoiler alert, his brother isn't in the first round of this mock draft, which I think he's justified, but he is going nicely at the Carnival, is Lucas. But for Ben, in terms of fit, so if he wasn't a father-son, this would make no sense. For the Blues, considering they've already got a plethora of inside midfielders, as we know, but The fact that Carlton are going so well could stash him in the VFL to either work on his game, expand on his already existing skill set, because he is an inside beast, works his ass off, isn't elite with the footy in hand, but considering he's around that 25 to 30 disposal mark consistently, not only for Glenelg, but for South Australia in the Carnival, shows that he knows how to win the footy, and there is absolutely no rush. At best, he is their third best midfielder behind Cripps and Walsh when he's ready to debut and gets himself sorted. He's still got to compete with Hewitt, Kennedy, Jack Carroll, these kind of guys. So I don't suspect we're going to see him a lot in 2025. And you know what? That's okay. Back to Freo, I've got them taking Sam Layla. Now, there are a couple of clubs that seemingly are a lot more interested in Sam at this point, seeing a bit of love from the Bombers, seeing a lot of love from Richmond here. But of course, this draft is without trade, so just keep that in mind before you comment away. Injuries have hampered poor Sam, but at 187 centimetres, he is a wrecking ball, whether he's first or second to the footy. And that's not a slight. This kid tackles like nobody's business, right? And that is what I mean by that, I can assure you. Had 34 on the weekend for the Rebels as he looks to strengthen his case as a top 10 selection at this point in time. Very comfortable with him heading to the Dockers. I know midfield may not be that point of need, but they've also got the next pick in this draft as well. So just keep that in mind, and we can have some fun here. But Sam to the Dockers makes a lot of sense. Yes, Sarong, Brayshaw, Young, these guys are around the mark, but is Jaeger O'Meara going to be the answer? Probably not. This kid could be. Cooper Simpson looks like a winger, in my opinion, alongside Jeremy Sharp, Nathan O'Driscoll. They've got that depth there. The Dockers, best talent available, and I reckon that's this kid. Job Shanahan's here for the Dockers, who would add that third tall forward, who's also got some defensive nous. Had half a dozen tackles in his last game of the Carnival, and he's continually going beautifully. Had a really good showing against WA as well, taking some nice marks, kicking a few goals, and just looks like a player. When you've got Tracy, who's your big bullocking forward, you've got Jai Amos, who's going to be your athletic guy who wants one-on-ones. Job Shanahan can lead up at the ball kicker and do his job beautifully. And when the ball's on the ground, Jai Amos is probably not your defensive beast. Job can come in and do that as well. So if Freo don't use any of their first 3-round draft picks, they look second in line to the Eagles in the Liam Baker sweepstakes. So what they're going to be able to do here is going to be interesting. Could they package up those picks, move up potentially, and just take two guys in the first 10 to 12? Maybe. We'll see how that goes. But at this point in time, the three blokes they're picking up fit them beautifully. The Bombers take Isaac Keiko here. Really like what this kid can do. Little bit inaccurate. Kicked 14-21 for his season so far. But it's funny to me how Nick Watson can get criticism, a lot of it, for being hugely inaccurate so far in his AFL career. Yet this kid's got massive raps on him. Rightly so, even though he's inaccurate as well. Be a little bit hypocritical, considering one of them's nearly 18 and one of them's 19. Not that big of a difference. One of them's playing AFL, more highly pressured, but hey, that's just one man's opinion. Has also shown some midfield nous, has had 24 and 29 disposal games throughout his draft year so far, Isaac. So adding strings to his bow is going to be uber important. I love the look of this guy, and I have zero doubt that Essendon fans would be leaping out of their chair if they pick up this classy young man. Adelaide match a bid here for Tyler Welsh, and I don't really have anything new to say about him. Has had a decent start to the Carnival. The WA smacking of South Australia, I don't really hold against him. Kicked 2 behinds, only had the 3 disposals, but did kick a few goals in the game before that, so he is in pretty decent form. Loves to hit up at the kicker of the ball, has a really nice set shot routine. And again, with Fogarty, with Thilthorpe going to be your bigger, bulky guys who can run that forward line. Welsh would never get the best defender, can be on the move and would be a nightmare matchup once he fills out and becomes AFL ready. Big tick for the Crows here. Taj Houghton heads to the Swans here, and I can completely understand if you're thinking to yourself, Daz, on talent, this is a massive slide. The ACL doesn't help, and I know that someone like a Braden George might be the best case scenario here of going, well, you got to be careful with these guys, but poor Braden's just been bloody unlucky, right? Whereas Taj is a genuine star. Had 32 and 4 goals against the Oakley Chargers earlier on in his draft year, but that ACL is going to sideline him for a while. His natural talents, his natural gifts are on display, wins the footy, uses it well, loves to find the goals, and his rotation into the midfield late last year, early this year, has been a godsend for his draft stocks. He is rising all the time, and the club that gets him, yes, may need to work on his rehabilitation. Maybe we won't see him for the first half of 2025, but the Swans, they love blooding young kids, and when he's ready to go and fits that culture, he's just going to be another one where we go, they found one. Back-to-back for the Swans, they take Subiaco's Malachi Champion here. It's the best name in the draft, don't get me wrong, but he's kicked 6 goals from his 3 carnival games so far, which is always nice. And the human highlight reel, he up forward, he and Taj, alongside Tom Papley, Will Hayward, is a small forward line group. I know Will's more of a medium forward, but is just going to be so exciting. The amount that he will bring to the table for the Swans is extraordinary. The fit is incredible. I love this so much. I really do. And it would be a shock if he did slide this much come the end of the year. But this isn't projecting. This is what we know now. And Malachi to Sydney is just frightening. And that's how you know it's a good pick. And to finish the mock, the rawness of Noah Mraz to the Suns makes a lot of sense. Yes, you might think another key defender. They've got Harry O'Farrell there. But at this point in time, he is just a bigger body that Gold Coast can mould into whatever is required at this point in time. It would surprise me if Gold Coast did have this pick come the end of the year, but we're not doing trades just yet. As we get more information past the halfway point of the calendar year, we may be able to work in with a few things. So that's super exciting. It really will be. But Noah is a guy who I think may not make it to next month. So I think the midfielders that are coming through. And as we get more carnival games, we're going to find out more and more about these guys. But his rawness, his physicality, Dimmer is going to be able to make him into whatever he needs from this young man. And the Dandenong Stingrays product is going to be a guy who's very coachable, and he's going to be a guy who is going to be able to turn into whatever is required. He is so raw and so gifted. So that is my mock draft for June 2024. What do you think? Comment below, let me know. Hit the subscribe button if you want to join the Daz Talks Footy family, and you have an epically good weekend, my friends, and I'll see you after round 16.